Salute, greetings. Part 3, Jim Jones, MK uh, Ultra, CIA mind control experiment with Jim Jones. And he was a preacher, and he had a church with the majority black congregation. And there's a movie out, Jim Jones. And he, at the end, persuaded his followers, which consist of black people, to poison themselves, drink the Kool-Aid. They had some poison and some Kool-Aid. Man, woman, and child. I think all of them. I don't think it was too many survivors, maybe one or two or something. They drank that Kool-Aid and died, but he himself was executed. This is someone who was investigating or researching all about Jim Jones. He's giving an interview. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This is part 3. Go back and look at the other part 1 and 2 for further information.
Over in Angola with the CIA, we have Dwyer down there, the station chief of the CIA. They had a covert operation. If they had to have with Dwyer, they had to have a covert operation which was not reported to Congress. Now, the Hughes-Ryan Act of 1974 said they had to report all CIA covert operations to the oversight committees. That was Rio's legislation. He co-authored that. There was no such report of a covert operation in Angola, in Guyana, meaning, I brought this out in Washington, one thing they're checking into in Washington now, that the CIA broke the law if it had a covert operation there and did not report it to these oversight committees. So what we have here is, Rio goes down there, and the question is, was Dwyer there? Dwyer came in from Thailand. He was with the CIA since 1959 in Guyana. We have photographs of Dwyer with his arms around Marceline Jones and Jim Jones out there. We have Dwyer going back to Jonestown after the shooting, and Jones getting wiped out. And what we now have an admission back to the Senate Intelligence Committee, for example, that they now admit that Dwyer was CIA and is CIA. If these people were, what I'm doing is this: you're asking questions on CIA and the definite involvement. They always deny. They denied that Dwyer was a CIA agent when they first charged it. They now admit it. They only admit what you can prove. We have here a copy of a document called Who's Who in the CIA, one of these attachments here, listing Dwyer as CIA since 1959 and where he's been.
Well, let me get back to my original question. I asked you, since you made the statement that you felt the CIA was using People's Temple as an experiment. My question was Jim Jones aware of it? Was he part of that experiment?
If that experiment exists, because I'm saying to you that this possibility is a strong possibility. I'm inclined to believe it, I can't be sure, but I'm saying yes, that if such an experiment was there, Jones would have had to have been part of it and would have had to have led that experiment. Let me read to you this one statement from Jones, which is quoted in a guy, I hate to give you the source because it's the book The Strongest Poison by Mark Lane, and I know that Lane has lied in other parts of his book from personal experience. But there's a statement here, which you can read here, about Jones is claiming he was a true and loyal and patriotic American, and the terrible shame was obligated to remain in Guyana, and the world people would never know what a patriot he was. This is a statement from Jones, down in Jonestown. So what I would like to have you do, this is what I'm feeling here, is it's very difficult for me to sort of shorthand this much documentation, but all I'm really doing is suggesting to you that I'm making this statement today to this forum. I've asked them to take the documentation I've attached to consider going in and reviewing this data and conducting further investigations on their own, especially in the black community, among survivors, among relatives of that, to see what evidence they can find there, to either corroborate or disprove these statements about the mind control experiment in Jonestown.
Do you see any significance in the fact that Jones did his recruiting and had his temple in the black community insofar as an experimental situation that the CIA might have been involved in is concerned?
I'm not sure that he started there deliberately. I think it's possible, more likely, that he had something going already, a church going, and that if they were going to try to use cults or religious groups for this experimentation, they may have looked around for likely candidates who were already in action, already in operation. And they may have looked at somebody who was a charismatic leader type. And I don't think that he was started off this way. I think they may have watched his career and then decided to approach him. I think it was more likely that he was already underway.
Do you have any conclusions as to how the people died in Jonestown?
Yes, I have part of our documentation here is a report from, which is attached here. The chief medical examiner in Guyana is a Dr. Leslie Moto. He reported, and this is attached here, his opinion that more than 700 of those bodies found at Jonestown were not suicide victims but were murdered. He based this on the injection marks in the upper arm. Page 4 of my statement here.
By injection,
Yes, and by gunfire. There were a lot more people killed by gunfire than they've ever admitted so far. We have heard reports that there were 50 of them, approximately 50 men with guns ringing around there, so people couldn't get out, and very few of them did get out. So it's according to the chief medical officer in Guyana, most of the people down there were murdered rather than suicide.
who is suppressing all of this? Are you implying the CIA was active in the suppression?
Yes, I'm suggesting to you that a lot of things that don't make sense here. I'm suggesting that the long delay in anyone getting in, the press getting in there, or very many people all getting in there for several days, was caused by a deliberate attempt to manufacture the story, which has now been accepted and sold successfully to the American people.
And what is that story that you think the people are falsely accepting?
That, in effect, this was a large group of disillusioned or disoriented black people who went down to Guyana and who turned their backs on this country and committed suicide, and we might as well we'll get rid of them, and that's just an aberration type of thing. I think that's the story that's been peddled. When you see the documentation here, you'll begin to wonder yourselves why the first reports were 350 people died or 400 people died, and for several days that was reported, and then they started finding more bodies. When the first reports were that 500 fled in the jungle, the people examined the bodies the first time and counted them by name, by number, and I said people, men, women, and children, turned them over. Then a few days later, they claimed to have found 2 and 3 stacks of bodies underneath those. You know, it boggles the mind, the stories that were passed out, but they apparently have gotten away with, I think, with one of the greatest fabrications of recent years.
Well, what do you think was really going on there? What do you think is going on?
Whatever happened at Jonestown, I believe that our government, through the CIA, was in close touch with Jones before he left this country, that our government helped him to get established.
This is to be continued. Just a little bit more. We're going to put it on the next video. Share this video, like this video. Research. This is Black Light.